when I said I was going to do coaching, they were a bit like, coaching? Well, what's that? Are you coaching me now? And I was like, no. You don't get it. You have to contract it. You have to arrange it. It's not just something it's not a dark art. I'm not going to hypnotize you and suddenly you're going to be being coached. And actually that particular chap I'm thinking of, who was a little bit like, I don't need coaching, it's all mumbo jumbo. And literally about 6 weeks ago, he rang me up and he said, I need coaching. So I was like, hey, he's seen the light.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Regin, and today's guest is Kate Waterfall Hill, a leadership coach, author, podcast host, and the creator of the viral character Linda the Bad Manager, which is, as of now, has more than 150 million views across channels such as LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. You'll be able to find Linda the Bad Manager there. Kate helps CEO founders, MDs, and senior leaders turn people headaches into high-performing, psychologically safe teams. She's the author of How to Lead and the host of the weekly podcast of the same name, where Linda shows us how not to lead, and Kate follows with practical research-backed fixes you can use immediately. Through one-on-one and group coaching, leadership workshops, and keynotes, Kate equips leaders to communicate with clarity, set real accountability without micromanaging, navigate tough conversations, and step out of the weeds to set a compelling strategic vision. And it's a pleasure for me to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. I'm wondering if it's like Kate or the Bad Manager today.
Well, you better behave, otherwise Linda might come out and tell you off. But right this minute, I'm definitely Kate.
Thank you. So I want to understand a little bit about your coaching business. So initially, when it comes to how you started it and what inspired you to become a coach, I want to go back to the very beginning. So looking at LinkedIn for Waterfall Hill Consulting, it's been 18 years and a half since you've started this business, right? But when we think about coaching, was it even earlier than that, or?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I suppose my heart's always been in business, really. That was my original sort of thing. I did a business degree. My parents were business people. All my siblings have been entrepreneurs of one sort or another. It's sort of definitely in my genes. And I started out in marketing and was promoted really early to the managing director of a marketing agency when I was only 29. So I had a pretty fast track career in terms of leadership. And then after I had kids, I wanted to set up on my own and have a bit more flexibility, set up Waterfall Hill Consulting in 2007. And the main thing then was really small business consulting. So I was providing advisory services to CEOs and founders, managing directors of small businesses. But what it became was more and more HR consultancy, because that's where the fires were, and I was helping them put out fires. And then I realized what I really enjoyed was the people side of things and helping nurturing talent, finding the covered up talent that people weren't getting to. So I'd have managers come to me when I was managing director of the agency. I would have managers come to me saying, we got to get rid of Sue. She's rubbish. And I'd say, whoa, hold on there. What have you tried so far? What exactly, when you say rubbish, what's the definition? What are your expectations? Have you given, what sort of training has she had, et cetera, et cetera. And then trying to coach the managers to be better managers, to coach the people to be better performers was absolute gold to me. I loved that. And I loved it when you rescued somebody who was going to be elbowed out the door by their manager and then turned them into a star performer. And I thought, actually, that's what I really, really love. So I decided to channel my efforts into coaching in a more official capacity by training as a coach, and then relaunching my business from consultancy to coaching, although it's still called Waterfall Hill Consulting because I didn't want to change it at Companies House, so it's still called that. And yeah, I love it. I love nurturing talent.
So right now is all coaching, or is there parts of the consulting still?
No, it's all coaching. Yeah. So I had the original business was consulting, and I started doing coaching, and my income was up, up high for the consulting business. And I thought, well, I'll build up the coaching business and gradually resign, because I had retainer businesses that I was being paid every month for years. I had some clients for 15 years. So,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I wasn't doing too bad a job, but one by one I was resigning them. And now I've got one tiny one left, but it's a small one. My original boss from the marketing agency, I still work for him.
Cool.
But it's to me, it was about helping leaders have a bit of a handbook, because I saw firsthand how managers get thrown into leadership with no training, and I myself had no training. I realized I could maybe take out some of the bumps and bruises, if you like, that I had in my own career, and help others skip some of that pain by giving them some support in the way of coaching. So that's really why I wanted to mix my business experience with that love of, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
asking slightly annoying questions, but useful questions that get people to think in a different way.
And so right now with your coaching business, when we're talking about the ideal client profile for you, since in this podcast we have two audiences, one of them is other coaches who are listening, and the other one is the audiences of the coaches who we've had on the podcast because they've shared the podcast episode with their LinkedIn profiles and their email lists. So for the leaders who might fit your ideal client profile and are listening, I want to kind of like try and describe that ideal client profile a little bit deeper. So we're talking about leaders, but would you describe it even further than that? Is there a certain demographic? Is there a certain psychographic, industry, or some common goals or other commonalities you're seeing?
The common goals are definitely people who are self-aware enough to know they want to change from where they are now to being a better leader and elevate their skills and bring out the best in others and themselves. And they've got a sense of humor because they've usually found me through Linda the Bad Manager. So they usually got a bit of a spark about them, which is great. But in terms of industry or sector or even location, age, tenure, whatever, I've got a book. Hold the line, caller. Right, here we go. There's the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got the book, How to Lead, which is obviously sort of entry level in terms of investment, a good way to get started. And it's really for any leader or even a would-be leader. There's some really good stuff in here in terms of having it by your side as a guide. So, you've got somebody who's difficult at work, I'll look in the book and find out what to do about managing underperformance, or got a conflict. Oh, let's have a look at the conflict chapter. I've got the podcast as well. So I help loads of, I get emails and contacts from loads of different people who've said how much they enjoyed a specific episode of the podcast, which is great. I've got a digital online course, which is called the Digital Academy, online resources. And again, that's really suitable for anybody. The Leadership Accelerator, which is the group program, probably mid manager level. Sometimes I get CEOs and founders of smaller businesses, startups or smaller businesses. That's a lovely community. And then the one-to-one coaching tends to be more senior leaders, CEOs and founders. And it tends to be, not always, but it tends to be small businesses. And my sweet spot is creative agencies, because that's what I did before I did coaching. So my absolute perfect client is the managing director of a creative agency, particularly if the founder is still present, because that's a very difficult dynamic sometimes to be an appointed managing director and have the founder still around, either as the chairman or as a floating sort of expert who, often won't go away. So managing that relationship.
There's a few groups, you would say there's a few buckets of types of clients that you typically help with. And for each bucket, there's a certain program for each. Cool. And I feel like this is going to sound like a stupid question, but when it comes to how people find you, which marketing channel, because there's many right now, we definitely know Linda, the Bad Manager. Which marketing channel is the most effective for you right now?
It's a mixture, actually, between TikTok, Instagram, and a bit of Facebook, and a tiny bit of LinkedIn. I don't seem to get any calls generated from my YouTube channel, although it's not a bad channel. I think I've got four and a bit thousand followers on there. But the big one is TikTok, 148,000 or something followers, and actually more and more Instagram. So I'm growing My Instagram following has really grown in the last 6 months or so, now up to 50,000, and the view levels seem to be getting bigger on there as well. And the interaction's good. And I also use ManyChat. So ManyChat's quite useful for getting people to download more details about things. And that's a good interaction, on the extra thing that you can get on Instagram.
And for other coaches who are trying to also grow their audience, did you find that you had, when it comes to strategy, did you find that when Linda the Bad Manager was presented to the audience, that's where you actually started to see an increase in the following? And so before that, it wasn't really working that well? Or how would you describe
Yeah, well, I first started out doing Instagram Reels just as me, doing little snippets of advice, what do you want to do if you procrastinate? Here are 3 top tips type of thing. And it got a bit of traction, bit of interest and a few leads, but nothing, setting the world alight. And then it was when I literally stumbled across doing Linda, I had decided to, just for fun, do something on TikTok. I thought nobody I know is on TikTok. Nobody will see it. It doesn't matter. And I'll just have a bit of fun doing it because I've got that creative side to me from my marketing days. And I'm naturally a bit of a show off. I'm happy to do a podcast like this, for instance. And so I thought, how hard can it be? My grown-up kids are on TikTok. And so I did Linda the Bad Manager skit one evening in January 2023, and almost straight away it took off. So I just did another one, and I did one every day for 18 months. And then I do post nearly every day, but I quite often repost old ones now. So I post fresh content probably about 3 or 4 times a week. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah.
I like that took off. So right now it's mostly these channels that are working really well. And thinking about the future for your coaching business for the next 1 to 3 years, where are you going? Do you have some specific goals you're working towards with your business?
Yeah, definitely. I'm aiming to grow my Leadership Accelerator Premium program because it's where I can have the most impact, really, because one-to-one, I'm limited. I can only really take 2 new clients on each month. So I had a call just before you, and the person was saying, am I going to have to wait till October? And I said, yeah, maybe even I've only got 1 place in October. I've got 2 places in November. So, there's a limit, isn't there? There's a, ceiling to how many one-to-ones you can have at once. And I also do corporate work as well. And they're asking me to do one-to-ones quite often as well, and sometimes team coaching. So I think the way I'm going to have the most impact, reach the most people, and actually have the most fun is doing group coaching. And I just get fantastic feedback from the team. I take a break from calls during August because most of the people I work with are going to be on holiday at some point. So it just seems I didn't want to have group sessions with not enough people in them. And it gives me a chance to have a break. So at the end of July, I finished up saying, hey, we're having a break now. I mean, they all knew that. I didn't throw it at them. And the response was, I'm going to miss it so much. I really enjoy these Tuesday sessions. And then we had the first one back yesterday, and they were like, it's so good to be back. And so it's really nice. It's a really good community and nice bunch of people. And as well, what I was saying before about them being self-aware and having a sense of humor. I've just found a really nice way of bringing in people with no ego, who are happy to be vulnerable, happy to share their challenges. And of course, that encourages the next, because it's an evergreen intake. So it's not a cohort program. I get new people coming in each month. So the existing people encourage the new people to be the same. So it sort of seems to be rolling on that way. Yeah. So my 3-year plan definitely is to build the Leadership Accelerator Premium so I can scale the business and I can start using associate coaches, which I've started doing. So I have one guest speaker that I've had for a while now. She's been coming on as a guest to talk about neurodiverse leadership. I've got another leader, Caroline Dunn, coming to talk about change management. And I've got another coach called Nikki Hill. She's coming to do a guest slot on stakeholder management. I'm starting to spread my wings a bit and grow a little bit.
So just for me to understand this, so we have the group coaching, but when you say Leadership Accelerator Premium is kind of like a different package than the regular.
No, so my original program was called the Leadership Accelerator, and it was a 3-month program. And then I decided to relaunch it as a premium package and have it as a 6-month program. And on top of the weekly coaching, the members portal, and the access to my digital course that they get as part of the program, in addition, they also get an extra 12 weeks of coaching, but they also get membership of the Institute of Leadership. They get a certificate at the end if they complete a questionnaire, some reflections questionnaire. At the end, they get a certificate from the Institute of Leadership, and they also get DISC profiling. So they get a DISC assessment, and they get the workplace report and the management report. So that's why I stuck premium on the end, because it's better than it used to be.
I see. Cool. But yeah, it's an improved program, and now it's 6 months.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it's also evergreen, right? Meaning, let's say, what happens after 6 months?
So they can stay on if they want to. They pay an alumni fee and they stay on as long as they like. I've got some people who've been in the program for 2 years and they still, they don't come along to the calls very often, or if at all, but they can watch the recordings and they still have access to the Digital Academy program. So yeah, generally speaking, I get about 5 new people each month join, and they join the existing cohort. So say I've got, I don't know, I'll have 30-ish at any one time, but only about 15 or so come to the calls. So because they're, they've got other appointments or they're on holiday or whatever, and then they watch the recording. So yeah, it's on a rolling basis. Sometimes it ends up being 20, sometimes it ends up being 5. Either way, it's good for me.
Cool. Amazing. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about investments that you've done in your coaching business or in yourself over the years. What would you say have been some good investments that you feel really good about, you learned a lot or got a good return from? And what have been some investments that you don't feel so good about, you wish you hadn't done those investments? If there's any of those, probably there are.
Yeah, I'm a big one for keeping on developing and wanting to progress all the time. I'm certainly a big one for coaching and having supervision. So the programs that I'd identify as being the great ones were with a business coach called Joanna Lott. So originally, when I first set up in business, I joined her program, which is called the Business of Coaching, which is for new coaches looking to launch their program and work out how to get clients in the first place. And that was absolutely brilliant. I did 6 months with her. Then I had a break and my business took off. And then she launched a mastermind. So I've joined her again, and I'm now in the second 6 months of a mastermind program with Jo Lott as well. And it's just brilliant because, particularly because I do most of my work online. I do some in person, but most of it's online. It can be quite isolating. And when you get a new bit of business, who are you going to tell? And it's really nice to be part of a community where, you can just stick it on the Slack channel, or you mention it on one of the calls that we have. And we see each other in person as well, face to face, once every quarter. And it's just lovely to share ideas, to share frustrations, to celebrate. And, all the great things of my group program is, I have that for me with the mastermind. So those two things have been absolutely great. I'm also in another mastermind at the moment for a short spell doing some work on my messaging. So I'm just trying to refine my own messaging. So I think that answers the question about what was good. In the question about what wasn't so good, I won't mention any names, but I did hire a company. The hype was, we're going to get you to $50,000 a month, and it just didn't happen. It was just a waste of time. I spent lots of money. There was a quite high pressure sales call. Make the decision now, and we'll give you $1,500 off. And I was like, I threw money at the problem, thinking that would be an easy solution. And in actual fact, it didn't work for me at all. I think I hadn't taken into account that the UK market is very different from the American market, and this was an American organization. And it wasn't a good fit. So lesson learned: do not be pushed into a sale. If people try and push you into a sale, run a mile. It should have been a red flag. And also that culture piece. Whilst we speak the same language, we're not necessarily on the same page.
What is it? And I find this interesting because I interview coaches both in UK and in US. Where would you say you see the main difference between the coaching in UK and coaching in US? I don't know if you've worked with clients in US or.
Yeah, I have actually. I have. I think possibly, but I haven't worked with any coaches in America, so I couldn't make a judgment on what coaching in America is like. But I know from anecdotal evidence, I suppose, and also just cultural evidence from what you see on TV and friends and traveling myself, is that the British coaching tends to be slightly more softly, I suppose. And my style of coaching is very much coaching in its purest form, listening to understand, reflecting back, asking pertinent, well-timed questions. And I did a course with Better Up, the American organization that does coaching, and they were a bit more, it's okay to ask permission and then give them advice, and that's not the training that I've had in terms of the International Coaching Federation training. So what I do now is I contract at the beginning of my sessions with one-to-one clients and actually talk about the difference between coaching and mentoring, and then if they want me to switch to mentor mode, that's fine. So I think maybe it's just nuanced a little bit more with us, and I don't know. It's probably a bit of a sweeping generalization, but yeah, that was my guess about it. What's your view of it having met?
So what I've seen is in US, it's much coaching is a much bigger industry than from what I've seen in UK, and a lot of people do believe in coaching more. When we think about clients, do believe in coaching more in US rather than in UK. In your case, is not the problem because you have such a bigger audience, so it doesn't affect you. But coaches that I've met from UK do say that believing in coaching is not as strong as in US, probably.
Yeah. I think it's getting there. Yeah. I mean, I've had some clients, some of my consulting clients from many years ago. When I said I was going to do coaching, they were a bit like, coaching. Well, what's that? Are you coaching me now? And I was like, no. You don't get it. You have to contract it. You have to arrange it. It's not just something it's not a dark art. I'm not going to hypnotize you and suddenly you're going to be being coached. And actually that particular chap I'm thinking of, who was a little bit like, I don't need coaching. It's all mumbo jumbo. And literally about 6 weeks ago, he rang me up and he said, I need coaching. So I was like, hey, he's seen the light. So he started, and he's had 2 sessions so far, and I'm hoping he's going to rebook some more. So yeah.
Cool. And so right now, getting back to your coaching business for all listeners and the coaches as well, I also want to learn more about challenges. So when thinking about your coaching business right now, you mentioned you want to grow your Leader Accelerator Premium program. Where are you facing challenges right now that you're trying to solve?
I think for my business, it's really about scaling while still giving the clients the depth and the attention and all that sort of stuff. So, one-to-one coaching can be so incredibly impactful, but there's only one of me. And if I'm going to scale the business and work with associate coaches, will that work? Are people buying Linda the Bad Manager sort of thing? Do they want it to be me? So the challenge now is how I grow the group programs and the digital academy as well without losing that depth, but also without using the humor, which makes my work most effective. So I think probably what makes me different from other coaches is that because I use the humor, the insight, the storytelling, and I've had that actual first-hand experience of being a leader. I'm not just a coach who's got the experience of coaching other leaders. I'm a coach who's been a leader, actually walked in their shoes. Those things, particularly the humor, seems to make the message not only land, but stick, and have a lasting transformative effect. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge is scale.
Cool. And I want to get to scale because the next question is for other coaches who are trying to scale their impact just like you are, is there any advice you'd like to give to these coaches? It could be an advice you give to yourself too, because you're trying. So you don't have to think about who's receiving it.
Yeah. I think possibly it's about trying not to do everything. I mean, I suppose there's 2 schools, isn't there? There's the people who procrastinate and don't do anything and sit at home fiddling around with their website and actually aren't getting out there and so people don't know about them. So that's going to be difficult to scale your impact if you're not being visible enough. And then the other school is the people who try and do everything. and I'm a bit in that school. I'll write a book, I'll launch a podcast, I'll do, I'll have a digital product. So, I have grown the business at pace. And I think possibly my advice to myself would be to slow down a bit, to enjoy the moment, to walk by the river a bit and enjoy life a bit as well as pushing really hard. But actually getting really clear, the question that you asked me earlier on about my ideal client is quite a topical one for me at the moment, because I'm having a think about, do I actually want to be a coach that says, I only work with people in creative agencies? Is that my specialism? Is that where I want to go? And that might be where I end up going with my one-to-one. But I think the group program and the digital academy is useful for anybody from any background or and any tenure and any level of experience. But the one-to-one, I maybe, because I'm selling out every month, I think maybe I could specialize. I could afford to specialize and not work with people who aren't in industries that doesn't interest me so much. Yeah.
So you're always thinking of keeping the one-on-one, right? You're not thinking of like going all in the Leadership Accelerator Premium and just doing group coaching.
I just love the one-to-one, and particularly when it's people who who are running agencies, and I can see them saying, I don't know, it sounds a bit egotistical, doesn't it? But they get so much out of it. and I can see a difference, what a difference I can make. Yeah, so that's probably it. And I feel like perhaps that depth that you get with one-to-one is something I still really enjoy. So I probably wouldn't want to cancel it altogether. Yeah, it would be weird not to have it at all. I think it's probably quite a good string to have to my bow as well, because the one-to-one coaching is the purest coaching I do, whereas the group coaching tends to slip into advisory quite a lot because you sort of have to for speed. If somebody's asking you quite a complex question, you've got 10 minutes to help them with it in coaching. You could spend quite a lot of time trying to dig under the cover of, what's your motivation? What's the obstacle? What have you tried so far? But actually, they just want, what should I do next?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, Kate. Thank you so much for taking time to come into our podcast today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, that's not going to be too difficult. You will be able to find Kate Waterfall Hill or Linda the Bad Manager easily. So one way is to go to LinkedIn, look up Kate Waterfall Hill. We'll be able to connect with you. And if you look up Linda the Bad Manager, you'll be able to find many, many other channels where they can connect with you. So LinkedIn, TikTok, and other channels like YouTube as well. I believe there's also the website waterfallhill.co.uk where we can send people to it.
That's absolutely perfect. Yeah, you've covered it all brilliantly. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put that website on the description as well for people to easily click to it. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much, Kate or Linda. Thank you so much for coming.
I hope I wasn't too scary for you.
No. This was all Kate. So thank you.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.